Okay, now we can finally get to our readings or whatnot, right? So, what's it called? So yeah, we had two readings this week. Our last recording we were reading, what does the Spartacus want or whatnot, right? Or what does the Spartacus boon want or whatnot? And now, now we're going to talk a little bit more about on the Spartacus program or whatnot, right? This great speech that Luxemburg gave or whatnot, right? And actually, before we get into this, I just want to read one quote from on the Spartacus program or whatnot, right? Said by this guy named Paul Froelich, or actually, there's no accent there. Paul Froelich, who was a participant in this Congress or whatnot. He said, the tension which developed at the Congress between the sober wisdom of the leaders and the revolutionary impatience of the younger elements was lessened immediately as Rosa Luxemburg addressed the Congress on the party program. The delegates had anxiously observed what a great effort of will was necessary before her exhausted body could triumph over the effects of long imprisonment, ceaseless excitement, nervous tension, and serious illness. But no sooner had she begun to speak with inspiration worked wonders, and she was suddenly her old self again. All her physical weakness fell away from her, all her energy returned, and for the last time her passionate temperament and brilliant oratory held her audience spellbound. A convincing grip, stirring and inspiring. It was an unforgettable experience for all those who were present. 16 days later, Rosa Luxemburg would be executed. I should also just a little. I guess it's not a trivia fact; it's kind of an obvious fact or whatnot. But something I think is kind of just super fucking amazing about Rosa Luxemburg is Rosa Luxemburg, in some sense, during her time, she kind of suffered 3 different handicaps or whatnot. She was she was a woman or whatnot, right? During a time in which you have I think you have your first wave feminism arising at this time, but women are generally not really that respected or not in society, or are seen as equals to men at this time or not. So she's a woman. She's second or whatnot, and I'll conclude these as as one of the same thing. She's a Polish Jew or whatnot, right? She's Jewish or whatnot during a time where anti-Semitism is rampant or whatnot, and let's be clear here or whatnot. She's in Germany or whatnot, the country that would later become Nazi Germany or whatnot, right? And she's also Polish or whatnot, right? And the Poles were heavily discriminated against or whatnot. She was a Polish Jew or whatnot. And 3 or whatnot, she was handicapped or whatnot, if I recall correctly, during the end of her life or whatnot, she died pretty young. I believe she was 40, I want to say, when she was killed or whatnot, something like that. If I recall correctly, she couldn't walk with one leg, or one of her legs was crippled or whatnot. And she had a few physical ailments or whatnot, right? Despite these 3 handicaps or whatnot, she was able to lead the German Revolution or whatnot. Amazing woman. In the Spartacus program, something really fascinating or whatnot is the demands being made here. So the Communist Manifesto, so Luxemburg makes this point that hey, when the Communist Manifesto was written or whatnot, the Communist Manifesto was written in, I should have probably written, well actually the dates are here, yeah. So when the Communist Manifesto, actually, let me think about this. So, that's all good. So yeah, when the Communist Manifesto is written or whatnot, the Communist Manifesto is written in 1848 or whatnot, right? Where Marx and Engels are writing on the eve of revolution or whatnot. And on the eve of revolution or whatnot, they basically list 10 demands, but I'm going to summarize it in basically 3 or whatnot, right? So the Communist Manifesto basically broadly makes 3 demands, which is 1, to abolish, what are the immediate tasks of the proletariat and revolution? It is 1, to abolish privileges or whatnot, land ownership, what's it called? Owning the means of production, this or that or whatnot, right? Et cetera, right? Abolish privileges. 2, nationalization, or nationalize the economy, nationalize the land, nationalize this, that, or whatnot, right? Nationalization, and also liquidate the difference between the city and the urban and the countryside or whatnot as these kind of 2 contradictory things or whatnot. Liquidate or whatnot, right? Liquidate authority or whatnot, liquidate all this. So yeah, and 3 or whatnot, establish true bourgeois right. men and women being equal or whatnot in their labor or whatnot, right? They're not being like like an absolute equality to the right to work, to the right to labor, the right all this or whatnot, and it's like true bourgeois right or whatnot, true social equality or whatnot, right? These were the immediate tasks of the revolution. So again, Communist Manifesto in 1848 made three demands: abolish privileges, nationalization, and liquidation, and establish true bourgeois right or whatnot, right? After the experience of the revolutions in 1848 to 1852 or whatnot, right? Marx and Engels wisened up or whatnot, right? In the sense that they both had this recognition that, like, hey, then later or whatnot, right? They wisened up after. So in 1848, they came away with the lesson that, hey, the working class could not just, the working class would need to establish like political independence or whatnot. Because as long as it's as long as it's with the other classes or whatnot, right? The revolution will not succeed or whatnot. The working class needs to establish its own political independence or whatnot, right? Later on in 1871 or whatnot, you have the Paris Commune or whatnot, right? In the Paris Commune, you have like the first you have the first like establishment of like the working class trying to take power or whatnot, right? And like the Paris Commune fails or whatnot, but like there was a lot of street fighting, there was a lot of barricades or whatnot. Like even though Marx and Engels had thought that the revolution that was the Paris Commune, even though that came too soon or whatnot, they still nevertheless applauded it, and there was still a lot of important lessons to learn from 1871. But the lesson that came out of 1871 was one, that the proletariat could not, like we read in the State Revolution last week, that the proletariat cannot take hold of the ready-made state machine, that they must abolish it or whatnot and create their own state. And two or whatnot, that hey, maybe maybe we can't engage in street fighting and barricades anymore. Like, if the state has a fucking machine gun, well, what's a worker gonna do trying to fight an officer with a gun? Or right? So they recognize that, like, okay, conditions have changed or whatnot, right? Street fighting, barricades or whatnot, we can't just do this anymore or whatnot, right? So during this time or whatnot, there starts to form the first international and then later the second international, where there's a recognition by the socialists or whatnot, or specifically the social democrats or whatnot, that hey, we need to engage in like the parliamentary struggle, the daily political struggle or whatnot for parliament. And I should note here, when Luxemburg writes the Spartacus program and whatnot, she talks about how Engels, Engels having this, recognition and whatnot, said, hey, we need to engage with the parliament, or in parliament or whatnot, because like we can't just, Engels has this recognition of we have to engage with the parliament or whatnot, because we need to train the proletariat for revolution. Now, something that's interesting here or whatnot is Luxemburg says that, hey, Engels had an understanding that, this parliamentary struggle is ultimately for the end goal of revolution or whatnot. However, when Engels writes and agrees with what the German SPD or whatnot takes up as, in some sense, their their demands, the EFERT program or whatnot, right? She's like, oh well, Engels is affirmative of it, or Engels agrees with it. He gives a justification for it because or whatnot, right? Or because in some sense he has this pressure or whatnot to be parliamentary. But Engels would support a revolution or whatnot coming on. Like Engels understood, the parliament or reforms as a means to revolution. The funny thing here or whatnot is Engels actually wrote a criticism of the EFERT program. However, Rosa Luxemburg didn't know this or whatnot, and the reason why she didn't know this is because the SPD actually censored and hid this or whatnot, and this actually only became known in 1920, a year after Luxemburg's death. So everything that Luxemburg being oh, Engels wrote this, but Engels would have actually said this. Engels actually did say that or whatnot. That's a funny thing or whatnot, right? But she didn't know that or whatnot because unfortunately this document was held and censored or whatnot until after she died, and it turned out everything that she was oh well, Engels would have thought this and this or whatnot. Turns out she was right. He did think that. But it was censored. No one knew. Funny how history works, right? So the Communist Manifesto, these three demands: abolish privileges, nationalization and liquidation, true bourgeois right. The EFERT program, once the SPD became a legal party, once the anti-socialist laws were repealed and all that sort of stuff, the demands of the EFERT program became one, for political rights, universal suffrage, for like, what's it called, like equal right or whatnot, right? So, the EFOR program, one, demanded political rights. Two, they demanded, like, as a minimum program, the establishment of social democracy, like a welfare program, basically, like, certain concessions from the state or whatnot, less hours in the working, or like an 8-hour working day, and all this sort of stuff, right? And of course, their max program was socialism and whatnot. But it should be noted here that the Communist Manifesto, super revolutionary demands: abolish privileges, nationalization and liquidation, true bourgeois right or whatnot, right? The EFOR program calms itself down. It says, okay, let's have equal political rights or whatnot, right? And then it says, okay, as a minimum demand, we want social democracy. As a maximum demand, we're working for socialism or whatnot. Much more tame, right? It's a legal party or whatnot, right? But here's what's interesting. Luxemburg says, hey, with the advent of World War I or whatnot, with the advent of the Great War or whatnot, though like Marx and Engels had wisened up after the Communist Manifesto and had discarded street fighting and barricades and all this sort of stuff, and they tamed their demand. Marx was dead once the EFOR program was published or whatnot. But when Engels throws in his support for the EFOR program, being like, this is all right and whatnot. Again, he wrote a criticism of it that was censored. But when his word was distorted, where it was his only affirmation or whatnot, right? It's like, okay, they tamed or whatnot. Luxemburg makes the point that, hey, we're writing the Spartacus program now, but because we're at the advent of World War I, or with the advent of this, as Lenin pointed out, imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. So too is it the greatest opportunity for revolution. Luxemburg said that, hey, we can now make the same demands that Marx and Engels did back in 1848. That actually, 1918, 70 years after the Communist Manifesto had been published or whatnot, actually now we can start making these demands. So Spartacus' program, it makes like 10-ish demands or whatnot. It calls for an international, calls all this sort of stuff. I'm going to summarize, the pamphlet should be read or not for all the demands, but I'm just going to summarize it as basically it makes three big, and this is just painting a broad picture. It makes three broad demands. One, replace the standing army with an armed populace and confiscate resources for and by the people. Two, replace the parliament with worker councils and establish true bourgeois right. And three, nationalize the economy completely and forgive all war debts and all this sort of stuff. So what's going on here? So Luxemburg's whole phrase of socialism or barbarism or whatnot, right? She talks about how hey, in 1848 you had the bourgeoisie could no longer rule and the proletariat could not yet rule. But in 1848, you had the potential of socialism or whatnot, right? You had bourgeois society in crisis or whatnot. And in this crisis of bourgeois society, you had the possibility for socialism or reconstitution of capitalism. You had the Communist Manifesto make these very radical demands of society or whatnot. It made communist demands or whatnot, right? But in 1871, after the failure of the Paris Commune or whatnot, right? You have the creation of that EFOR program in 1891, where you have, in some sense, you have a progression and a regression and whatnot, right? In which, time has passed by, but you also have, in some sense, a regression of that revolutionary fervor, but also a progression of, you have the workers' movement be built up and whatnot. So, there's an ambivalence here. On the one hand, you have the progression, which is you have socialist parties emerge, you have the workers' movement grow, and all that sort of stuff. But you also have this regression or whatnot, in which, you don't have that same revolutionary fervor as before or whatnot, right? So you have this regression or whatnot happening during this time or whatnot, right? But then you have 1914, and then later you have 1918. You have Luxemburg's moment, which is, hey, we are in a very revolutionary moment that, in fact, we can make the same demands as the Communist Manifesto because we have returned, in substance, if we've regressed from 1848, now we can regress to 1848 and actually, return back to the crisis of bourgeois society or whatnot. To make the slogan of socialism or barbarism, either our current crisis will lead to the establishment of socialism or to the further regression into barbarism. And it should be said, insofar as we don't live in socialism, insofar as we don't live, in some sense, in a society in which,
we are all free, in which we are, we're all free. Work is, not a prime need, but instead a prime want or whatnot. Insofar as we don't live in that society, insofar as we kind of live in the decay of society, then we have to recognize that, insofar as we don't live in socialism, we have to recognize that we've lived in 100+ years of barbarism. And what is barbarism in some sense? Barbarism is this injustice that, the potential for freedom, this potential for freedom, this potential to live in a radically, this potential to be like who we are, to self-actualize or whatnot, right, was never achieved. Instead, we live in this great injustice where we live unfree. We, unfortunately, no matter, like, we can live our entire lives, but because of our conditions or whatnot, we can't in some sense fully self-actualize ourselves or whatnot, right? We're contained in our conditions or whatnot. We've lived in 100+ years of barbarism or whatnot, right? Truly, like, the 1918 marked the world revolution, but the world revolution failed. And hence, our present, and hence, you see, what comes after the failure of the revolution? You have, the Holocaust follows, then you have Hiroshima follows or whatnot, right? You have all these tragedies or whatnot. You have the Israel-Palestine conflict, thousands, millions dead or whatnot, right? Yeah, you just have, barbarism, more and more barbarism. So, let's talk about the legacy of, because, I began this presentation by saying that, in some sense or whatnot, like, the Platypus syllabus really starts here or whatnot, because here is where we really start to talk about historical regression. So, let's talk about the legacy of 1918 or whatnot, right? Because I'll say the legacy of 1918 it has 3 different colors or whatnot, right? I realized I actually did draw it in 3 different colors. I'm proud of that. But yeah, the legacy of 1918 has either 3 different colors. Either like, in school, in kind of like, in kind of your liberal institution, in your kind of progressive, using this in kind of like the Woodrow Wilson kind of idea of progressive schooling, whatnot, right? Do we look traditional / progressive schooling? They're both political or not, right? I should say they're both just not socialist education or schooling. But like, in your traditional or progressive schooling, whatnot, right? 1918 is usually just remembered as like, oh no, that's just when the German Republic collapsed, or that's just when you had the collapse of the empire or whatnot, right? In some sense, there's just a denial of revolution or whatnot. November 1918 is not understood as a revolution; it's just understood as, oh, there was just a collapse of the empire or whatnot, right? You'll like outside of the left or whatnot. If you ask people about the Weimar Republic, or if you ask people about the history of Germany or whatnot, they usually won't talk. They don't have a conception of revolution. They'll just say like, oh no, it was just a collapse. The empire collapsed or whatnot, and then the Weimar Republic was established. But it's like, that forgets that fucking, workers and soldiers went out on the streets. They formed Soviets. They were preparing to create a new society. Whatnot. They had imaginations for a better world, for a different world. Whatnot, right? Like it's completely memory hold. It's completely forgotten. Whatnot, that there was a genuine revolution here. Then you have like the social democratic / like Stalinist reading or whatnot, right? Which unfortunately, like, this was actually taken up by like the common intern or whatnot, and also the social democrats of like the old left, the new left, and post-political left, and you even hear today or whatnot, where like people frame like Stalinists, social democrats, the majority of the left or whatnot, right, will understand the legacy of 1918 as a national revolution, right? They'll be like, oh, the Russian Revolution was a successful revolution, and then the German Revolution was a failed revolution or whatnot, right? Russia had a successful communist revolution. Germany had a failed, socialist revolution, womp womp, right? But they're missing something here, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to separate the Russian and German revolution as these 2 different things or whatnot, right? Where it's like, oh, Russia had their own revolution, Germany had their own revolution. But these revolutions are tied, because, again, the German Revolution was directly inspired by the Russian Revolution. And the Russian Revolution, the reason why they had the revolution is because they were holding out for Germany to have a revolution. They did it for the sake of the world. They didn't do it for their own national liberation. They did it for the sake of the world, or whatnot, right? And, I guess in Platypus or whatnot, and I guess, some Trotskyists, if there are any anymore or whatnot, will have the understanding that what 1918 was is 1918 was the world revolution, or 1918 was the end of the world revolution or whatnot, right? 1917 marks not the victory of the Russian Revolution, but the start of the world revolution or whatnot. Let me repeat that. 1917 was not the success of the Russian Revolution. It was the start of the world revolution. And 1919 was not the failure of the German Revolution, but it was the end of the world. It was the end, and it was the crushing of the world revolution or whatnot, right? In 1918 should and must be understood as it was by and for the world or whatnot, right? The proletarian socialist revolution is a world revolution or whatnot, and in some sense, the melancholy of Platypus comes from the fact of recognizing that the world revolution had failed or whatnot. The world revolution had been crushed or whatnot, right? It is tragedy or whatnot, right? In some sense, like looking at the legacies of the three. If one understands it as a collapse of an empire or whatnot, then one has no understanding of 1918 at all. One has no memory or whatnot, right? If one understands it as a national revolution, in some sense, like one can just dismiss it as kind of like a farce or whatnot, right? Where it's like it's not something that, well, in some sense, like it could be taken seriously, but in some sense, it's like it just becomes like a random historical trivia fact or whatnot, right? Like one doesn't really comprehend. Like one might have a recognition that, the failure of the Spartacus or whatnot, the failure of the Spartacus fund or whatnot led to the rising of the Nazis. One might have at least that recognition or whatnot. Most of the left will have that recognition of like, the failure of the, well, actually, if they know anything about it, but most of the left will have the recognition of like, the failure of the Spartacus or whatnot directly led to the rise of the Nazis or whatnot. But they'll also forget that the rise of the Nazis also led to the consolidation of Stalin in power or whatnot, and led to the deterioration of the Soviet Union into an authoritarian regime. Because let it be said or whatnot, in the 1920s or whatnot, the Soviet Union was a very politically colorful regime or whatnot, very politically pluralistic. To call it totalitarian, to call it democratic, to call it a dictatorship, to call it a democracy or whatnot, none of them would be accurate because it was something the world had never seen before or whatnot. But because of the failure of the German Revolution or whatnot, right, and the rise of the Nazis or whatnot, the historical function of fascism was to crush the working class organization. And in some sense, the fascists succeeded or whatnot, because what happened to the workers' state? The workers' state deteriorated into an authoritarian regime, a revolution that started off with a great libertarian impulse, ended up devouring its own revolutionaries. And it gave us the horror of the gulags or whatnot, right? But under the national revolution framework or whatnot, the best recognition there is only that the failure of the Spartacus fund or whatnot led to the rise of the Nazis. But that doesn't actually take account for what happened in Russia or whatnot, and what happened for the rest of the world. Only with an understanding that, the German Revolution was, in some sense, the German Revolution was really the principle of the world revolution, the proletarian socialist international revolution. Can one really grasp, in some sense, like the horror, the terror, and also in some sense the lost reality we have? But I should say this, that in some sense, the unfulfilled potential of 1917, the unfulfilled potential of the world revolution, in some sense, that is the history that remains real by its unactualized potential. The latter history of Stalin, FDR, Hitler, or whatnot, right, of the Bonapartes and whatnot, right, of the Bonapartists and whatnot, that was, in some sense, that may have been actualized history or whatnot, that may be real history or whatnot, but in some sense or whatnot, right, sure, but what can we say about that real history if it links to the present or whatnot, right? In some sense, I know this is going to be a very esoteric point or not, but in some sense that history remains fictional because there's nothing that came out of that history, or freedom did not come out of that history. In some sense, the unactualized potential of world revolution or not. In some sense, insofar that it's been unfulfilled, it's that potential still remains real or not. And in a sense or not, it's that's something that we ought to really, in some sense, grasp at. So even though I have framed this in a melancholic picture or not, I do also want to point out that there is, insofar as Luxemburg understood her own moment as, a regression from 1848, and that also suggests the possibility for the regression to 1848. We should ask ourselves, can we go back, or if we've regressed from 1917, from the crisis of Marxism and whatnot, can we progress to 1917 or whatnot, right? Because I'll note this or whatnot. If 1848 was the crisis of bourgeois society, the advent of capitalism and whatnot, in some sense, the civil war of bourgeois right or not. What 1917 and 1918 was, or the whole period of 1917 to 1923, all these world socialist revolutions, what they were the civil war and Marxism or whatnot. So there's a real question of, can we return to the civil war of Marxism to advance that crisis, to maybe actually achieve or not, what had not been realized or not, right? Yeah, I think that's a good place to end.